I'm joined by Professor Neil Ferguson, who will be discussing with me the occupation of New York City under the British.
It's easy to forget that 1 in 5 of the people living in the 13 colonies remain loyal to the British Crown. New York became headquarters for the British counter-revolution. And from the vantage point of people living there, it was a pretty tough decision to stick with a revolution after the city had been occupied by these well-trained and rather intimidating soldiers. And so there were people who signed up for the Declaration of Independence who quickly and perhaps forgivably decided they'd better switch back to being loyal subjects of His Majesty the King. One also has to remember what this was. It was a relatively small colonial settlement huddled at the southern tip of Manhattan Island. It was a pretty rough and ready place. And the population was an interesting mixture of British officials, of soldiers. During the war, there were a substantial number of American patriot prisoners held in appalling conditions. There were freed slaves. So New York was a febrile place, but also politically, because there was an enormous tension between those who had put their money on independence and those who remained loyal to the crown, who were very numerous and who thought, with good reason, that they would be the winners. Remember, it was the British who had the military upper hand. They had the trained army. They had the ammunition. The Patriots were reduced to melting a statue of the king to provide themselves with bowls for their muskets.
That's right.
The British occupiers, King George III and his oppressive army, are long gone from New York City and Bowling Green. But way back then, Bowling Green is where the hated statue of King George was destroyed on July 9th, 1776. And Bowling Green is where the last British troops still in America at the end of our successful revolution departed from Bowling Green and General Washington watching it all. Today, Bowling Green and New York City is under assault again, this time from His Majesty Mayor Bill de Blasio. Back when the British occupied Lower Manhattan, they closed off New York City's only park, Bowling Green, to punish New Yorkers for being rebellious. That was until New Yorkers rebelled on July 9th, 1776, and took back their park and smashed the statue of the king right here. Today, it is the new occupier, His Majesty Mayor Bill de Blasio, abusing Bowling Green again and again. He turned Bowling Green into a year-long marketing gimmick for a huge financial company that does many billions of dollars in business with Mayor de Blasio in New York City. He also placed a large number of ugly cement blocks here. He has also tried to remove the great gift of charging bull from Bowling Green to give it to the big international company that owns the New York Stock Exchange. He has otherwise ignored Bowling Green since he has been mayor for over 5 years. The most historic place in New York City, Bowling Green, not giving it the care and attention it deserves. And now, eerily reminiscent of the British almost 250 years ago, closing off Bowling Green to punish New Yorkers, just this past week, de Blasio, in his biggest and worst outrage so far against Bowling Green, attempted to stop the glorious 23-year tradition of inspiring, patriotic, flag-raising ceremonies at Bowling Green that first began in March 1996. Hundreds of occasions when American flags and the flag of other proud nations have been flown side by side at Bowling Green, with so many of New York's ethnic groups coming to Bowling Green, where they can and have raised both the American and the flag of their heritage and their ancestors to fly side by side over New York City at Bowling Green. Bill de Blasio would have been the perfect candidate to be King George's brutal occupying general here if de Blasio was around back in the 1770s. Too bad he wasn't. We would not be forced to deal with him now or surrender our city to him. Our great city deserves so much better.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here on such a great day. And I think the thing I want to point out as somebody who's got a role in making history relevant to Lower Manhattan, this is a really important day. This part of Manhattan, the lower part of Manhattan, was where New York as we now know it, the city we love, the city that never sleeps, the financial capital of the world, it began here. And when the British greased the flagpole to stop the Union Jack from being sent down, and nobody could get at it, and a sailor, by the way, a sailor, put on some cleats and climbed that greased flagpole and pulled that flag down so that the stars and stripes could be sent aloft, it marked the beginning of a new chapter for this country that we now live in and that we now know.
We've heard this is a national story, this is certainly a New York story, but this is a Manhattan story and a Lower Manhattan story. Over 230 years ago, we said, this is our land and we're going to protect it. And so after that sailor ripped down the Union Jack and we raised Old Glory, and George Washington came all the way down from north in the Hudson, right down Broadway here to say this is our land, and really stood up. And Lower Manhattan has been kicking butt for over 200.
The story gets even worse and proves how bad de Blasio is, as well as ignorant of the city he rules over. He does not even know the history of New York City. New York City was founded at Bowling Green as New Amsterdam originally, and since the Dutch arrived here in the early 1600s and built the fort at Bowling Green, since then Bowling Green has been synonymous with flags ever since. The most prominent symbol of New Amsterdam was the Dutch flag flying high over what is now Bowling Green and over the entire colony and New York Harbor. The Dutch flag flew high over the new city until the British took over, renamed the city New York City, and replaced the Dutch flag with the British flag flying high over the city. Then it was the very historic day when the American Revolution came to its successful conclusion on November 25th, 1783, the British flag came down at Bowling Green and was permanently replaced by the American flag, which flies here to this very day, high over Bowling Green and always will. Bowling Green is all about flags. There is no place more fitting, and indeed there is no other places in all of America's largest city where immigrants from all over the world who have come to New York, some first many generations ago, others far more recently, they all come to Bowling Green to display their pride as Americans and New Yorkers and to honor their heritage by raising both the American flag and their other national flag. There is absolutely nothing better or a more impressive way to celebrate unity and national pride than these inclusive, inspiring, flag-raising ceremonies at Bowling Green again and again, month after month, year after year since 1996. I pray, and I hope you do, this wonderful tradition will continue for hundreds of years to come. It could not be more diabolical nor more oppressive than for His Majesty Mayor de Blasio to issue a royal decree last week: no more flags will be raised at Bowling Green ever again. Why? Only to punish Bowling Green and the Bowling Green Association. A blatant, illegal abuse of his authority by His Majesty Bill de Blasio. With the assistance of a free press and the New York Post, founded by the greatest New Yorker of all time, Alexander Hamilton, who would be appalled by de Blasio, with the assistance of the New York Post, we have forced de Blasio to rescind his ugly, illegal decree. Sadly, of course, we cannot trust anyone like Bill de Blasio. He will retaliate, make further attacks on Bowling Green. We will resist, and I hope you will resist, and together we can protect Bowling Green from Bill de Blasio.
To be here, I want to really congratulate and thank Councilmember Eugene on his leadership to make this day, this is the first Haitian Day that we're having here in the city of New York, and something that hopefully we will continue to mark from this day forward. And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity.
Put your hand together for Mr. Piccolo. Please, welcome Mr. Piccolo, please.
You know, normally as chairman of the Bowling Green Association, at events like this, I like to talk about the history of Bowling Green, that the city was founded here, that the American Revolution ended here. But I want to say a few words about Haiti. I want to give a little more nuanced view of Haiti's relationship to the United States. In 1791, the only successful slave-led revolution in the history of humanity took place in Haiti.
To people of African descent, over 200 years of blood, sweat, and tears. If you proud, fear, throw your flags up in the air. Over 200 years of blood, sweat, and tears. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Pour les ancêtres, marchons unis, marchons unis, dans nos arbres de traîtres du sang. Soyons semés
From this day forward. And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity.
All right, just before the flag raising, would you all join me in saying thank you to two very important and special people here? One, you just heard, Arthur Piccolo. The other is Ibrahim Koutulis, who is helping raise the flag. A Christian and a Muslim who reminded us of our responsibility as Jews to raise the Israeli flag. They called us and they said, you have to raise the flag at Bowling Green. It's a historic place. This is a historic occasion. So thank you so much to them. Thank you.
Followed by the of Plenima, Nefesh Yehudiya, Ulfatei Mizrach Hadia, Ha'il Tzion Tavia, Od lo שנות אלפיים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון בירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון בירושלים.
Leading us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity.
My name is Jimmy Van Bramer. I'm very, very proud that my immigrant ancestors came to this country over 350 years ago and settled here in New Amsterdam. So it is a wonderful joy to be able to participate in this, to be a descendant of the original settlers of New Netherlands. I am very, very proud of my Dutch heritage, and so very, very thrilled to be a part of this event with all of you here today. New York would not be New York without the Dutch. So it's great to be here representing the New York City Council.
Arthur, and thank you very much, Jimmy van Bremen, to be here with us. Our relationship goes back some time because we are proud to have a Dutchman on the city council, a city council which started 2nd of February 1653. So we go back a long, long time. But what I found very important today is that this is also a tribute for those of the politicians who work for local democracy. Because what the Dutch brought to the United States was also a decentralized model of governing. And we need able and passionate local politicians. And that's why I'm glad you are here, Jimmy, and that's why I thought this morning when I woke up, this is going to be an historical day. An historical day, ladies and gentlemen, and let's make every year on the 2nd of February, every year an historical day.
Yes, yes, yes.
Pronounce it as the evacuation.
This is the flag that was first flown on November 25th, 1783. Not this exact flag, but this flag, the 13-star flag, was first flown.
That's beautiful.
Today, February 2nd, 1653, right here at Bowling Green, the birth of a great city, New Amsterdam. This was the day, from the perspective of the city, February 2nd, 1653 is truly the birthday of New York City. It is the day inside the fort, now the Alexander Hamilton Custom House, where a charter of self-government was granted to the citizens of New Amsterdam. All right. New York City, then New Amsterdam, became a city on that day. The city council that exists today dates from that very continuous link from that to today to the council. So this is like the birthday of the New York City Council. So on behalf of the Bowling Green Association and the Lower Manhattan Historical Society, special thanks, of course, to Dutch Council General Rob de Vos, most of all, to New York City Council.
Now listen to this BS by Bill de Blasio at one of the many ethnic events he holds at Gracie Mansion using city property and the many expenses paid for by all New Yorkers. These clearly political events to benefit Bill de Blasio only for invited guests, not you and me, at which flags of the ethnic group he in honor are displayed all over Gracie Mansion. Mayor de Blasio will never ever ban these Gracie Mansion ethnic pride events on city property for private audiences that benefit him politically. But the hypocrite mayor of New York illegally used his authority to stop very public events open to all at Bowling Green with flags flying and celebrating the many cultures and nationalities that make up our city, New York City. Listen briefly to our hypocrite mayor.
And we as New Yorkers, not only are we going to stand by our values, we have to show this country and this world this is the right way to do things. Everyone together, everyone respected. And so we're proud to celebrate the Caribbean diaspora. We're proud to celebrate what people have contributed. When I think of the Caribbean community, I think of strength, I think of resiliency, I think of creativity, I think of entrepreneurship, everything we want for our city. So whatever happens, and this is very consistent with what Charlene was saying when she... We will not let anyone take from us our pride in who we are. I don't care if even the President of the United States, no one takes from us our pride as New Yorkers, as immigrants, as proud children and grandchildren of the countries we come from. We will not let anyone take from us our pride in who we are. I don't care if even the President of the United States, no one takes from us our pride as New Yorkers, as immigrants, as proud children and grandchildren of the countries we come from.
And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity.
Από την κόψη του σπαθιού την ρομερή.
And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity. And obviously...
November 11, 1993, the Honourable P.J. Keating MP delivered a eulogy for the unknown Australian soldier that is regarded as amongst the most memorable speeches ever given by an Australian Prime Minister. In it, he spoke to the Anzac legend, a legend of free and independent spirits whose discipline derived less from military formalities and customs than from the bonds of mateship and the demands of necessity. Today, we gathered together as a community to honour that same Anzac tradition by commemorating 10 Australians who perished on September 11, 2001, just a few hundred metres from where we stand. We honour these 10 Australians through the raising of our national flag and reflecting upon what it truly means to be an Australian.
Hey, true blue, don't say you're gone. Say you've knocked up for a smoke hole, and you'll be back later on. Hey, true blue. Give it to me straight, face to face. Are you really disappearing? Just another dying race. Hey, true blue. True blue. Is it me and you? Is it mom and dad?
Stay forward. And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity.
Here with you today, representing the Consulate of Ireland and the Irish government. I want to say a huge thank you to Arthur, to the Lower Manhattan Historical Society, to the Bowling Green Association for preserving history, for promoting it, for sharing it, because as we all know, the history of the Irish in New York is the history of New York. These stories are all the same.
And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity.
Be able to understand that it's important, it's essential in a nation of immigrants for us to respect each other's rights, to be able to exercise each other's First Amendment rights and to be able to respect each other's rights to engage in our practice.
And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity.
The American flag, and I think, Bruno, you have the flags, which Jan will hand over in a minute. The American flag is a replica of the flag that first flew over Bowling Green when George Washington entered New York on Evacuation Day, November 25th, 1783, ending the American Revolution. It will be raised again after an Independence Day parade on July 3rd with the French flag.
The flag raising? Yes.
And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity.
Ladies and gentlemen, please empty this area. They're going to be here in the middle. Please, please open up.
He's the new, the young, energetic, the Consul General of the Republic of Turkey, Ertan Yalçın. Okay, so we will start with the U.S. national anthem.
Hanımefendi, pardon efendim, çekim yapıyoruz ya.
And all of you for joining us and making this happen, and the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity. this day forward. And all of you for joining us and making this happen. And the great, wonderful symbolism of seeing the two flags raised side by side, of that unity, right, and strength that comes from that unity. And obviously,